Tagouts are an amazing tool and I love them for sure. In BeerSharkMice, we did an entire show just based on tagouts. Now, tagouts can add energy and variety to a show. They can open up new avenues to explore and have fun with. They can allow you to go deeper into character, world, and story. But with great power comes great responsibility, and if used improperly, they can take an amazing, energetic show and bring it to a screeching halt. So today, I'm going to share 3 things that you need to do to make your tagouts amazing, and also I'm going to share 3 traps to avoid. But first, let's start at the very beginning.
Let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start.
What are tagouts and how do they work? A tagout is basically a way of taking one person in a scene to a new scene without editing the entire scene. And how it works is this. 2 people are in a scene on stage. One person sees their opportunity. I'll talk more about that in a second. They come out, they tap one person or tag one person on the shoulder. The person who gets tagged leaves the scene. That new person stays, and now we're in a new scene. But it might just be easier to show an example. In this scene that I'm about to show you, I am a love-struck nurse, and Neil Flynn plays the doctor and the object of my affection.
The love of my life disappeared 20 years ago today.
Who's been talking in the nurse's lounge? We heard all about it.
We heard all about it. She went on summer vacation. Her plane went down. He chartered a boat and he was out there calling it, Marie! Marie!
So you see Mike and Pete come out, they tag Neil, he leaves the scene, I stay in the scene as my same character, but now we're in a new scene in the nurse's lounge. That's how it looks. And now here are 3 things to keep in mind. First, the person who stays on stage stays their same character. In this case, it's me staying on stage as my same character, the love-struck nurse. Second, it's up to the person entering the scene to let their partner know whatever they might need to know to do their part of the scene. Where are we? Who am I entering this scene? What's going on now? Obviously, the person who stays in stays their same character, but the person coming in needs to bring this information and let them know what to do next. In this case, it's pretty easy. Mike and Pete come in as the other nurses, and then we show the conversation that I was just talking about. Third, tagouts are super time sensitive, so the person coming in has to jump on the opportunity as soon as they see it. As soon as Mike and Pete hear the idea that the nurses have been talking, they dive in for that tagout. Fourth, if you are the person that remains in the scene, then you have a pretty good idea that the person coming in wants you to keep doing what you were just doing or to be in the scene that you were just talking about. This is exactly what happens here. I was just talking about the nurses having a conversation in the nurses' lounge, so I'm pretty sure that's what the tagout's going to be. But if they'd tagged in and taken me to water skiing or something, I would have been totally lost. Fifth, and this is super important, if you are the person that gets tagged out, when you're off stage, you don't just stop and power down. You need to stay in the scene, mentally alert, and focused on what's going on. Because oftentimes, a tag out will just take a line or 2 to accomplish, and then you can tag back in and go back to that first scene. If not, you can often leave your partners hung out to dry. In this example, we end up moving on to something new, but I think you get the idea. We've been talking a lot about how tag outs work. Now let's talk about when to do a tag out. The simplest and most straightforward tag out is the time jump. The characters in the scene are talking about something that's going to happen in the future or something that happened in the past. And then we tag out and go to that future event or that past event. Let's say I'm in a scene and I'm telling my partner about a big job interview I have coming up. I'm feeling great about it. I'm going to go in there and tell everyone what's what, right? Now someone can come in, tag out my partner, and be that person interviewing me in that job interview. Now we're doing a time jump to the future to that job interview. Now when we're playing that time jump, there are basically 2 ways to play that scene. With expectations or against expectations. With expectations, I say that I'm going to go in there and tell them what's what. Someone tags out my partner, they're the person interviewing me, and I in fact have told them what's what. I really represented myself in a great way, and maybe my partner comes in and says, you know what? This was absolutely the best job interview I've ever been a part of. In fact, you should have my job. I still have so much to learn, clearly, right? With expectation, we expect that I'm going to go in there and tell them what's what. But we can also play this against expectation. So I say I'm going to go in there and tell them what's what, and then someone comes in, tags out my partner, they're the person interviewing me, and they're like, this is the worst job interview I've ever been a part of. In fact, security, get in here, get this guy out of here, right? Against expectation. I think I'm going to go in there and tell them what's what. It ends up going terribly, and security ends up taking me out. Notice how in both of these examples, the person who stays in expects to do something about the job interview because that's what they were just talking about. Also notice how in both of these examples, the person who comes in leads with some really telling information. This is the best job interview I've ever been a part of, or this is the worst job interview I've ever been a part of, so that the player who's staying there knows what to do next. The second basic type of tag out is the game tag out, where we are playing the game of the character. For example, I'm in a scene, I say, I'm always pleasant to people. Someone can tag out my partner, and we can see me playing with expectation, me being pleasant to someone robbing me in an alley. Or we could see me playing against expectation. Someone's bringing in a birthday cake and I flip it because I hate it, right? With expectation, being pleasant to a robber. Against expectation, smashing a birthday cake. We've talked about how to do tag outs, and we've talked about the different kinds of tag outs we can do. Now let's talk about why to do tag outs. Number one, to keep the energy and action on stage. You can see in the example about the job interview that my partner and I are talking so much about that the energy is sort of bleeding off stage. So let's pull it on stage and keep the exciting part on stage. Second, we do a tag out to add information to the scene without the players just talking about it. For example, maybe I say that I'm having a hard time committing to relationships because of what happened to me at prom. Right? Now, I could tell that story of what happened to me at prom, or we can tag out and go to that story of what happened to me at prom, getting all that information out without me just telling a story. Showing and not telling. Now, let's pause for a moment. Let's talk about the person who got tagged out of the scene. You've gotten tagged out, you're in the wings, you're watching that scene, you see they're ready for an edit, so you go back in, you tag out the player that tagged you out, and now you're back in that original scene. Now, it's up to you and your partner to continue that original scene in light of what happened in the tag out, but there's a few different ways to do that. Maybe we just pick up exactly where we left off. In the scene, I was talking about how I had a terrible roommate in the past. We go to my terrible roommate, we come back to the original scene. That terrible roommate scene may not influence the original scene that much. But let's say we're using the scene where I said I had a terrible thing happen to me at prom. We can tag out to that terrible thing that happened to me at prom and then come back to the original scene as if I had told my partner that entire story, right? We saw it acted out, we showed it instead of telling it, but my partner can react with like, wow, what a crazy story, man. I'm so sorry. Let me see that scar or whatever, right? That as if I had told them that whole story, but we had just seen it. Also, maybe the tag out establishes or heightens something about the character that stays in. For example, in the scene where I was talking about I'm always pleasant to people, we see me in a tag out be super pleasant to someone, and the way that I do it is by talking baby talk to them. So when we go back to that original scene, my partner and I pick up kind of where we left off, but now I start being more pleasant to them using baby talk because we just saw that established in the tag out. That information filters its way into this scene and influences how it works moving forward. Okay, so that's the basics of tagouts. Now let's take it to the next level and show some more advanced ways that we can use tagouts. The first advanced technique is a run of tagouts, and it simply goes like this. Let's say we're doing a scene and I say how I've had weird roommates in the past. Now, as we said, someone can tag in and be that weird roommate, and then we can go back to the original scene. Or someone can tag in, be that weird roommate, and then someone else can tag them out and be another weird roommate and another weird roommate and another weird roommate. So we have a run of weird roommates. We may see 3, 4, 5 weird roommates before we go back to that original scene, okay? When we're doing a run, the one thing to keep in mind is that each progressive tag out has to bear a little bit more weight. The first one, simple. The second one has to be a little bit better. The third one, a little bit better, so on and so on. Usually about 3 tag outs is about as far away as I want to go before going back to that original scene. It's not a hard and fast rule, just a rule of thumb I've learned from experience. The second advanced technique for using tag outs is as an edit. Now, ordinarily when we tag out to a scene, we come back to that original scene. But in BeerSharkMice, for example, we do a form called the slacker where we follow one scene to the next, A and B, then B and C, then C and D, right? So instead of going back to that original scene, we can stick with the tag out scene and see where that goes. For example, in the scene where I had the terrible interview and the interviewer called in security, rather than going back to the original scene, we could stick with that scene where security pulls me out. And then maybe we do a tag out off of that. We see one of the security guards at home with their wife or girlfriend talking about their day at work. Or maybe we see me tagged out to my parents at some point, sort of talking about how the interview went so terrible. There's a lot of different ways, but rather than going back to that scene, we can move forward. As an example, I'll show you a little bit more of that doctor and nurse scene we were watching before. We'll start with the nurses tagging in to the nurses' lounge.
We heard all about it.
We heard all about it. She was on a summer vacation. Her plane went down. He chartered a boat and he was out there calling it, Marie! Marie!
Can I say something?
Marie! B-itch!
Come on, guys, I'm just saying, he had a love of his life once, then he needs someone in his life again.
Well, we're glad that you were the one that caught her.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure.
Well, I tried to give it my best shot with her, and it just didn't work out as well.
So you'll see how Neil, on the sidelines, staying alert, staying focused on the scene, saw that opportunity to tag out to this new scene with Pete. Not back to the original scene with me, but following what Pete's saying about his nurse having tried to hit on the doctor previously in the past. So we've talked about all the great things about tagouts, but now let's talk about a few things to be careful of when we're doing tagouts. First, we don't usually go into a tagout neutral. We come in with an opinion or a point of view of how that scene's going to go or what we're trying to show there, right? For example, in the interview scene, we don't just simply tag to the interview scene neutral and then kind of see what happens. No, I come in with an idea. I think this interview's gonna go great, or I think this interview's gonna go terrible. Remember that tagouts are super time sensitive. As soon as you see the opportunity, you have to jump in right then. If you miss it, you missed it. Because if the scene keeps moving forward, right, from A to B to C, and you want to do a tagout about topic A, but now the scene is on topic C, when you do that tagout, the person in the scene is going to be trying to do something about C, you're going to be trying to do something about A, and you're going to be at cross purposes with them. And third, when you're doing a tagout, don't just come in with a joke. Come in with the mindset that you're gonna play a new scene. I've done it and I've seen it a million times. Someone comes in with that one-liner, that one thing they think is gonna totally bring the house down, and it doesn't. And then they're stuck in that tag out without any sort of foundation or any sort of path forward for that tag out scene. As I tell my students, come in like you're gonna play forever. You're gonna start a whole new scene and just play that scene forever. So it has some foundation, some character, some point of view, all those things that a regular scene needs. Now, tagouts are a great way to add energy, variety, and depth to your work without editing the scene. But sometimes we're looking for a way to bring scenes forward from the first round to the second round or call them back later. And I've done an entire video about that right here. Check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.